In one of our recently published videos, one from our series On Location in London, Raphael sat down for an interview with Ash from the Chap's Guide, and a number of commenters shared that they felt Raphael's sitting position was disrespectful. Were they correct? To answer that question, let's explore what it means to sit like a gentleman. One note before we jump in. Basically, all of what we'll discuss in today's video is general advice for conventionally able-bodied individuals. We're aware that advice on how to carry oneself physically may not always be achievable, or easily so, for those with disabilities. As a person with cerebral palsy, I know this firsthand. If this applies to you, take what you can from this video and implement it as you see fit. First on our list here, number 1, do sit with your legs uncrossed at a 90-degree angle. This is more or less the default sitting position for many. Legs forward, bent at the knee, at or near a right angle, with feet more or less flat on the ground. The most modest way to sit is with the legs together, though this can sometimes be a bit uncomfortable for men. A sensitive subject, let's say. When wearing long trousers, or shorts that aren't too voluminous in the legs, though, you can keep a slight distance between your legs to keep yourself comfortable while avoiding any wardrobe malfunctions. Just make sure your fly is closed, and if you're wearing a kilt true Scotsman style, that's a whole other conversation. Keep in mind, though, that it's easy to inadvertently take up excessive space at the expense of others while in this stance. But if you make a conscious note of keeping your legs at around a 90-degree angle, you should be able to avoid any excess spreading while keeping enough space for your other considerations. Next is number 2, do sit with your ankles crossed. Another trick you can use to make sure you're not spreading your legs excessively is by crossing them at the ankles. This can be one of the better options in tighter public spaces where respecting others' space is critical. And while this position can sometimes be interpreted as nervous body language, some people are most comfortable in this stance, and it won't seem off if you appear relaxed and confident otherwise. Using myself as an example, my hips are naturally rotated compared to the average person, so I find that crossing my ankles is more comfortable than keeping my feet flat on the ground. If you sit like this, or any other way really, try to avoid excess twitching, foot tapping, and other cues that signal a lack of confidence. Next, number 3, do sit with one leg crossed. One of the most classic and gentlemanly styles of sitting respectfully is by crossing one of your legs over your knee. This style is ideal when seated on things like park benches, lounge chairs, porch swings, or anywhere it's okay to take up a little more space without disrupting someone else. It's considered most correct to keep the sole of your shoe on the crossed leg facing the floor in this stance, since it can be seen as a sign of disrespect in some cultures to expose the sole of your shoe to someone else. In other words, your crossed leg should meet your opposite leg at the knee or thigh, not at the ankle. The latter stance not only shows off your shoe's sole, but may also put it, and your foot, into close proximity with someone else. This is what those comments were pointing out regarding Raphael's stance when chatting with Ash. In general, if seated with your legs crossed next to one person, cross away from them, not toward. And when seated between two people, keep your knee positioned as forward as possible with your shoe's sole oriented downward. Number 4, do keep your back straight. One of the easiest bad habits for all of us to fall into while sitting is slouching and leaning over, especially if we're scrolling on our phones or working away at our computers for long stretches of time. Unfortunately, not only does slouching appear inelegant, it can contribute to long-term health problems down the road, including neck, spine, and shoulder tension, and potentially even a more hunched back as we age. Conversely, you'll appear far more confident to others when you sit up straight with your shoulders back. And as a bonus, your clothes will likely look better too. A trick to help with this if you're on your phone is to hold it at eye level when looking at it instead of down toward your chest and stomach. Just try not to make it look like you're taking a picture of someone unprompted. Number 5, do make space for others. When you're seated, be cognizant of the people around you, especially if you're in tight spaces like public transit or small restaurants. If there's no one else looking to occupy an empty seat, it's perfectly okay to put your bags or personal items on it, but this becomes extremely inconsiderate if an area fills up and there are now more people hoping to sit down. In such a case, it's better to move your items, whether that be under your seat, into an overhead area, or into your lap, without needing to be prompted, so that someone else can use that seat for its primary purpose. And while this can be dependent on local culture or your personal beliefs, it's usually seen as a considerate gesture to offer your seat to someone who's elderly, pregnant, disabled, or just in greater need of a seat than you if no other seat is available. By the way, note that we base this consideration chiefly on need, not simply on gender. For more on this, you can take a look at our video on outdated etiquette rules. Speaking of local culture, though, our number 6 item is do respect cultural and situational norms. In urban mass transit settings, when things are crowded, it's fairly common for anyone to take any available seat, meaning it isn't seen as abnormal to sit much closer to strangers than you might be inclined to otherwise. Aside from this scenario, though, there is a convention when finding seating in a public area to leave room between yourself and others when possible, especially in environments like medical or professional waiting rooms where idle chatter is less likely and less appreciated. Similarly, in cultural settings like at a theater, it's often implicitly expected to leave seating space if possible between strangers. Of course, as areas fill up, don't hesitate to fill in spaces as appropriate, and assigned seating generally trumps this custom. But it can be a good thought to keep in mind if those other factors aren't at play. Plus, when navigating crowded seating areas, be aware of the local customs as to what's considered being polite while moving past people. In North America, it's usually considered most correct to move with your back to the person you're passing, while in Europe, it's more traditional to move past with your front towards others. Ultimately, however, what matters is that when finding your seat, you move in a calm, considerate, and efficient way. Number 7, do consider your clothing while sitting. The more structured nature of classic tailoring means that there's more that can fall out of place when making sudden movements, so remember to adjust your jacket vents, trousers, and other parts of your outfit once you're seated. This way you can sit comfortably and help to prevent any excessive wrinkling in the process. It's also a fact of life that your thighs, stomach, and rear widen slightly when seated, and fitted garments might require you to reposition some of your fabric slightly to accommodate for this. It's also usually more comfortable, and often more elegant, to unbutton a jacket you're wearing while sitting down, with the exception being double-breasted jackets, which should ideally be cut loosely enough in the midsection that you can sit down comfortably while still keeping your jacket buttoned, even with some weight around your middle. This, of course, is just one of many classic jacket buttoning rules to keep in mind, as this video explains. Now for the second list in today's video, what to avoid when sitting. The first item here is number 1, don't slump or fall into a seat. Basically, unless it's a beanbag chair, avoid slumping into it. Not only does slumping encourage poor posture long-term, as we mentioned, it subconsciously communicates a lack of confidence and looks generally unappealing. Also, avoid simply letting your body fall back to drop into your seat. The force of the impact can be distracting to others around you due to noise, vibration, the resultant breeze, and so on. Plus, no matter your weight or size, dropping into your seat, or worse, actually throwing yourself into it, might damage said seat, which benefits no one. On a related note, be sure to actually sit on the part of the chair, bench, or what have you that's meant for sitting, literally called the seat, not perched on an arm or back that might accidentally break. Instead, position your chair, if necessary and possible, by sliding it out and then calmly sit down on it. This will not only look more distinguished, but will prevent any sudden movements which might disturb those around you. Next, number 2, don't be impolite when selecting a seat. Following on from one of our previous points, if there are a good number of empty seats available in a given area, it can be disconcerting if you choose to sit right next to a stranger or directly opposite of them. Doing so runs the risk of appearing intimidating or as though you might have ulterior motives. Of course, this can again vary by culture. In some regions, like southern Italy or the southern United States, the convention can be to sit closer, because it's understood that you will strike up a conversation with that person at some point. In most cases, however, we feel that you're best served giving others a bit of room just in case they don't feel like talking. You don't want to risk giving the wrong impression, even unintentionally. In other words, don't be a creep when taking a seat. Number 3 in this list of don'ts is a big one. Don't manspread. Yes, this buzzword from 2016 is still applicable today. Our very first point in today's video mentioned that while the most modest option is to sit with your legs together, there's nothing wrong with putting a bit of space, a leg width say, between your legs for comfort. But there's a marked difference between allowing enough space for you to sit comfortably versus excessively taking up space at the expense of everyone else. Spreading your legs to the point that it intrudes into someone else's space, or to where you can feel yourself making excessive contact with someone else's leg, might be a sign that you're overstepping your boundaries. A good rule of thumb is to try and read the other people around you if you think you might be spreading too much. If the other person or people look uncomfortable, or they're trying to angle themselves away to avoid making body contact with you, it might be a sign that you're overdoing it. The most extreme example of taking up more space, by the way, goes beyond manspreading. It's taking up multiple seats to lie down, which, as we hope should go without saying, is extremely rude in areas with limited seating. Manspreading chiefly involves the legs, but our next point is closely related. That would be number 4, don't be impolite with your elbows. Remember that your upper body can be just as likely to intrude on someone else's space if you're not careful, as arms akimbo can box them out. And a ride on the bus isn't a basketball game. If you're a broader or taller individual, this can be easy to do without even realizing it. So taking a second to check if you're imposing on someone else can be a good habit to develop. Also, if you're sitting down to eat, especially in fine dining environments, be mindful of how you position your elbows at the table. This rule is less important in more casual environments or areas where you're eating on the go. But you should always be cognizant of how you hold your elbows, especially when eating with others. And, somewhat related to not putting your elbows on the table, is our number 5 point here: don't put your feet on a table, desk, or other chair. One of the biggest potential signs of disrespect to everyone else you're around is putting your feet on another piece of nearby furniture, especially in an office environment. Not only are you exposing the soles of your shoes to everyone around you, but the gesture often communicates an inflated sense of superiority and entitlement. Also, dirt or dust from your shoes could get onto table surfaces or on the seats where people will need to sit. So keep your feet on the ground or your legs crossed. And if furniture actually designed for resting one's feet, like an ottoman, is present, then feel free to use it, keeping in mind the considerations about exposed soles we discussed earlier. In conclusion, then, we hope that these sitting suggestions can act as standing guidelines for you, and that they'll help you to ensure that you're being a gentleman in every aspect of life, even when taking a load off. Are there any aspects of sitting etiquette you think we missed? Let us know in the comments below.